Hey Kai, can you give us your full name?
My name's Kai Marie Taylor.
And where are you from, Kai?
I'm from El Paso, Texas.
El Paso, Texas.
El Chuco town.
Well, welcome, ma'am. Thank you for participating in this interview where we get to explain to the community that there's people with substance use disorders like ourselves
Yes.
who today live a self-directed, self-effective life where we don't do the same things we used to do, which was like breaking the law, living all, not the right way. Oh, so let's start with your story. If you can, just tell us about yourself.
Well, once again, my name's Kai. I'm from El Paso. I had a rough childhood growing up. I was really isolated. I went through a lot of trauma, a lot of abuse as a child. I contemplated suicide at a very early age. I remember as a child, approximately about 6 to 8 years old, I would leave notes in my drawer telling my mom and dad that I love them because I wanted to kill myself, and I was hoping that every day I would not wake up because I was unhappy. I didn't feel like I fit in this world. I dealt with depression at a very young age. At the age of 12, when we actually sat around the table as a family, my mom made us a big breakfast that morning. It was me, my little brother, my older brother, and my little sister, and my parents said, "Sit down." And my mom sat to the right of me, and she's like, "We have something to tell you guys." And I was 12 years old at the time, and I remember looking at her with this puzzled look on my face. And she said, "You guys are all adopted." And I looked at her, and I was confused, and I didn't know what that was. And I was like, "What do you mean?" And she began to tell me and my sister and brother that we are not your real parents. And I remember that day, my life changed. I have never been the same after that day. A part of me left.
So Kai, you're in recovery. You're in long-term recovery. You just celebrated 2 years clean.
Yes.
So grateful that you stayed and that you're able to show the community that people like us are worthy to be saved, are worthy to be given second chances, third chances, and whatnot. Give us a little backstory on your life before addiction.
Wow, before addiction, I wasn't a happy person. I was very isolated. I did manage to finish high school. I went on to go to a trade school because I was going to study to be a graphic design technician. Shortly after that, I got a job. And I remember that night, a coworker had asked me to give her a ride home. And I was like, I think I was about 19 years old, and I said, sure. She was an older woman. And I remember I dropped her off, and she asked me to come inside. Did I want to come inside? And I was like, sure. And she sat on her bed, and she was fumbling with some stuff, and I was like, okay, whatever. I thought she was rolling a blunt because I was a pothead at the time. And I remember she called me over to the bed, and she put a big white ball on a piece of foil, on a foil pipe. And she said, inhale, but not too fast, just inhale real slow. And I remember I inhaled, and the feeling I got was so euphoric. And at that moment, all my problems went away. And it was like the greatest feeling ever. And I remember I just laid back on her bed, and I still never knew what that drug was. And then a few days after that, she introduced me to another one of her friends. And I started doing it more and more, and that's when I found out it was crack cocaine. But by that time, I had fell in love with it. I mean, I fell in love with it the first time I tried it. And my life took a turn for the worst. I didn't know that drug was going to make me fall down the rabbit hole as quick as it did. I ended up dropping out of college. After that, my parents sent me to San Antonio. I went to a rehab there. I got kicked out because of my sexuality. It was a restoration ministry. I got kicked out because of my sexuality. I ended up hooking up with some people. I ended up getting pregnant. I wanted somebody to love me. So I wanted a kid, and I knew if I had a baby, I wanted somebody to love me unconditionally. So I ended up having my first son in May of 2005. But I didn't love him enough to stop doing drugs. Because shortly after that, when he was prematurely born, and he came out positive for crack cocaine. And I remember when I had him, the state of Texas came. Somebody from the state of Texas, the welfare department came and said, Miss Taylor, we're taking your child. We're from the state of Texas and we're taking your baby. He came out positive for crack cocaine. And I remember crawling up in the middle of the hospital bed in a ball. And I called my parents. And I said, you guys need to get to the hospital right now because they're taking my son. CPS met my mom and dad at the hospital the next day, and they said, if you agree to take your grandbaby home, we'll give your grandbaby to you as long as you agree to take him home and take care of him until your daughter gets clean. But she has to go take a hair follicle test at our office when she gets out of the hospital. So I did. And when the results came back, the CPS workers said that I almost broke the cup, that my levels were out the roof. So I went to Aliviani. And then I got put out of there. I wasn't ready for change.
What year was Liviani? 2005?
I went to Aliviani in 2005.
Was that the woman's residential?
Yes. I got put out. I was a very angry person.
How long were you there for?
2 weeks. I got put out for violent behavior. I was angry at the world and I was angry at myself. Then I still didn't stop. I got out of Aliviani and my parents let me back home. Shortly after that, they put me back out. I was back on the streets doing drugs, in and out of jail. Then 2007, I went to another restoration ministry here in El Paso, Texas. It was El Paso Powerhouse Church. I did complete the program. I became a director of the women's home. And I ended up getting married. Not by choice. I was up under my first lady and the pastor. And I was my first lady's backbone. I put my trust and my faith in this woman. And one day at church, she said, guess what God told me? I said, what? She said, God told me Andre's going to be your husband. And I remember telling her, no, the hell he did not. And because I had so much trust in her, I said, well, if God told her, I guess he is. But I knew in my heart that he wasn't. Shortly after that, we ended up getting married. He was a monster. I mean, he would beat me. I was a fat bitch. I was ugly. I remember I had a knee replacement back in 2010. I had a total knee replacement on my right knee. And I remember one day I had made him mad and he took my crutch out of my hand and held it in his hand like it was a baseball bat and swung it and hit me in the face with it. And I ended up getting pregnant with my second son in 2011. I went through so much abuse and so much trauma with this man. And I remember the day that I got sick and tired of being tired of getting hurt and getting beat and getting raped by this man. I was talking on the phone in my room on the bed, and he came around the corner and he grabbed the phone out of my hand because he thought I was talking to somebody else. And I was taking care of my business on the phone. And he snatched the phone out of my hand, and I got up out the bed, and he walked down the hallway, and he was in my son's room. And I remember he put his phone in his pocket, and I remember the pair of pants. He was wearing some brown plaid, blue and white pajama pants with a white wife beater. And I remember walking to my son's room, and I tried to grab the phone out of his pocket. But I knew it was about to be a fight, right? So I grabbed the phone out of his pocket, and I ran down the hallway. And I had long hair back then. I had long braids. In our house, when we went out the front door, it had stairs. And I remember reaching for the front door. And I remember my right foot hit the first step. And by the time my second foot hit the second step, because I knew if I didn't take off running and get away from him, he was going to beat the hell out of me. And by the time my foot hit that second step, I could feel my head getting ripped back inside the front door. And he ripped my hair out so hard, he pulled 8 plugs of hair out my head. It's probably why I don't have hair today, but he pulled hair out my head, and it was 8 plugs of my hair were sitting on the ground. He slammed me face first into the ground, and he got on top of me. He was just beating me and biting my back of my ear. I remember my 6-year-old, he was standing on the side of me, and my 1-year-old was sitting next to his brother. And while my husband was on top of me, beating me, I could hear my son saying, "Get off my mom, get off my mom." And I was telling my son, "Go get help, go get help." And it replays every day in my head. And I remember my son telling me, "Mom, I don't have any shoes on." And it was at that moment where a woman is going to find strength from somewhere to protect her children. And God gave me strength. And I remember I lifted up and I pushed him up off me, and there was a lamp. So when I pushed him up off me, he staggered in the back. He staggered into the lamp. And when I turned around, he had this look on his face like, "I'm going to kill you." And I remember it was a big drinking mug, and I did not know that at the bottom of that drinking mug, it was a weight at the bottom of it. But when I turned around, he was coming toward me. I turned around, and I grabbed the handle of that mug, and he charged at me, and I said, "Boom!" And I cracked his head open. And all I could see was just blood, and his shirt. In less than 30 seconds, his shirt was soaked with blood, and he was just there. And I remember the box of wipes was sitting there on the couch. I picked up my baby. I grabbed the box of wipes. I grabbed one diaper. I grabbed my son by his hand. I stepped over him. and I left. And the thing about it is the church members, we all had houses right next to each other. Nobody did anything. They all stood out there and they were all in their doorways just looking. Nobody came to help me.
Was it something that they knew was going on?
They knew it was going on. I had been telling him that he was beating on me, but because me and him at the time, we were the pillars of that organization. You know, I was the director of the women's home. I was the director of the men's home, the finances, the church. You know, I was the driver. I was the first lady and pastor's armor bearer. You know, because he held a very high position. He was a great asset, and so was I. And they just didn't they couldn't afford to lose him.
So, how do you feel about the church now? Is that like impacted how you view the church or any church?
At this point in my life, that has impacted my life on how I view the church in a whole. Yes, it has impacted my life a lot.
Do you still go to church or don't go to church, or how's that?
No, I do not. I do not go to church. I don't go to church.
After that incident, what happened? Did you leave town, or that was here in El Paso?
That was here in El Paso. Shortly after that, I got a divorce. Shortly after that, I got really, really bad on drugs. You know, I had stayed clean for a long while. You know, but through the marriage and through the torment and the beatings, the drug once again resurfaced, and that was what made me feel better.
Did you get in trouble for that incident, or what happened?
Oh yeah. Well, see, the next day, he left. Well, the next day, he went to the hospital. Of course, he pressed charges, you know. And I was home by myself, and I remember hearing, I was laying in my bed, asleep, you know, peacefully. My kids were at my parents' house, and I heard bang, bang, bang out the door. Yeah, I think it's one of the church members, and you know, somebody coming to check on me. So I fling the curtain open, and it's the detectives. And I'm like, they're like, you know, Miss Taylor, you're under arrest. You know, you shouldn't have left your husband for dead. You should have called us. You're getting charged with domestic violence, causing injury to a family member. We need you to turn around, place your hands behind your back. At that point in my life, at your breaking point, I didn't care whether he lived or died. And I just told the officers, I said, okay, well, would you just give me time to go put some sweats on and a jacket? Because I know it's going to be cold in that holding tank. And they said, since you've been so cooperative, go ahead. So I walked down the stairs, I walked to the police car, I turned around and they put the handcuffs on me. And I went to jail. Shortly after that, I did, my parents did bond me out. I did get a lawyer. But you know, by that time, the state of Texas picked up the charges, so, you know, because of my background.
Was that your first time in jail?
No. That was my second assault done bodily injury to a family member. To him.
Did he ever go to jail for hitting you?
No. Actually, no. Every time he would hit me and I would hit him back, he would call police, and because he would have a little scratch, they would take either both of us or take me. So yeah, I got tired of it, So since the law didn't take care of it, I took care of it myself.
And after that, you divorced them, and
Yes.
and at this point in your life, you turned back to drugs,
Yes. Yes.
to crack cocaine, alcohol, or what was the main thing you were using?
I was crack cocaine.
So, tell me about that. Who were you using with? What were the things that you were seeing while using? What were you doing while
Oh,
using?
Lord, man. I don't know what this crack had in it. After a while, from when I first started doing crack, it was mellow yellow, like it was cool. But then more progressively, as I started using it, I was getting very paranoid. I was jumping in the shower more often without the water running. I was hearing voices. I was seeing shadows. I mean, I could feel demons touching me. At one point I did have my apartment, but it was like the demons were taking over to the point where they actually ran me out of my own apartment, and I was sleeping in my truck outside of 7-Eleven on Fred Wilson. I don't know if it was enhancing my, the voices in my head, or was it something in the drug? But at that point, I really think I was losing my mind,
So, what are some of the things you were doing to get the drug?
I was doing things by all means necessary. I wasn't really out there, doing the whole... I was more of a panhandler, a thief, more like a hustle type. I had a hustle type mentality. I did sell a few of my cars. I did sell my Mustang for like $600, and I sold one of my Expeditions for $400. And then I sold one of my cars for $25. For $25. I was asking $30, but the guy only had $25, so I took that and ran with it. Basically, yeah. I took anything that wasn't nailed down, and if it was nailed down, I would pry it up and try to take it.
But let's go back. $25.
Yeah.
A car, and so you got that 25. You went straight to the dealer, I bet.
Straight to the dealer.
What was that, like one hit?
Man, yeah, it was one hit for a whole car.
Yeah, the things we do, right?
Yeah, I was out there.
So the cars, how do you have so many cars? What's going on there?
My parents, my family's in the car business. My mom is not really the lovey-dovey type person, but she's very, she shows love by showering with gifts. So I was a very spoiled child. So I would mess up one car. I've had over 10 cars. So I would mess up a car and they give me another car. So, once I didn't have that, oh, let me have this and I'll cherish it. I don't have that same attitude I have today. I wasn't grateful for anything.
So when you sell a car for $600, how much of the $600 do you spend on crack cocaine?
All of it.
Wow.
I mean, I might as well get it all at one time because I know I'm just going to keep going back.
So what began this recovery journey that you're on now?
The recovery journey? Honestly, I went to Alice in 2021.
Oh, you talking about Alas Nuevas, the recovery home out here in El Paso, Texas?
Yes. I went to Alice in 2021. And I've been to Aliviani a lot of times. I've been to a lot of places a lot of times. And I've always got kicked out because I was always rebellious, violent, or just didn't care about what they were trying to talk about. But when I went to Alice, even the director, Mario, he never forgot where he came from. And even if you stopped him in the hall, like, you would rarely see him, but when he was there, even if you wanted to talk to him, he was never too busy to talk to us. He always gave us his time. And just the staff there, the facilitators, the coaches at Punto. I had a few coaches, but I found one in particular.
When you say coaches, what do you mean? What kind of coach?
The recovery coaches, the peer support specialists there. They have the passion because they have the lived experience. And I don't know, it's hard to explain. They make you feel welcomed. They don't have judgment. I found my coach had patience. Well, the third coach I had, after so many, they finally found one that fit me. They had patience. She had a lot of patience with me. And not many people have patience. Well, in my substance use, not many people had a lot of patience with me. A lot of people gave up on me. They didn't want to deal with me. They couldn't deal with my mental issues. I really wasn't a really balanced person. I'm a little balanced out now, but I wasn't really balanced out. I was a teeter-totter, but they found somebody that was my equal,
Where does this coach work at, or what's the name of her organization?
This coach is Perla Lawrence. She works at Yandel, Punto de Partida on Noble Street. So anyway, after I left Allah's, I did fall hard. I completed the program, but I left. And when I fell harder than I ever fell before. And I ended up, I knew if I did not get out of El Paso, I was going to die. Because I was out there bad. And I had visions and dreams of me laying in a casket. And I could see my kids standing over my casket, and I could feel their teardrops falling on my dead body. So I remember October 18th, I went to my parents' house. I wasn't welcome at my parents' house. And I remember I got there about 7:30 that morning on October 18th. And I walked in my mom's room before my kids had to go to school. And I hadn't showered or ate in about 10 days. And my mom looked at me and she said, "What do you want?" I said, "Mom, I need your help." She's like, "What?" "I don't have no money." I said, "I need you to send me to Miami." "What's going to be the difference this time?" And tears started falling down my face. And I said, "God's going to help me, Mom." And something in her heart, she just looked at me. And she said, "Give your kids a kiss goodbye, because you're not going to be here when they get back. And find yourself a ticket so your dad can get your ass on this bus." I said, "Okay." I found a ticket. I left that day with the clothes on my back. Well, I took a shower, but I took a shower, put some clean clothes on, but the clothes I had on my back, I stayed on the bus for 3 days. And I got to Miami. I stayed there for a whole year. And I still stay in contact with my recovery coach from Punto. We've always had a relationship, even when I left Atlas. She's always been my biggest supporter, my biggest fan. I never had a recovery coach that stayed in contact with me. Most of the recovery coaches, once you fall off, they fall off too. But it seems like this one just hung on to me. She never lost hope. So I decided to come back. And when I came back to El Paso, I didn't want to come back, but I had to come back because my kids were here and my parents were here. And I had to face my demons here. I was tired of running. It's either now or never. I took a deep breath and I got on that plane and I came back. And first place I went to Punto. And I said, Perla, she gave me a big hug, and I said, I don't want to hang around the same people, or I don't want to hang around the same places. Like, I want to get my license. I want to start driving after 10 years. She said, okay, go take the test. I got my license. Punto helped me get my driver's license. She said, Kai, I think you should become a recovery coach. And I said, Perla, I think not. I want to drive trucks. And she's like, aye, Kai. And then I went home, and my dad said, Kai, you didn't go through all this in your life to become a truck driver. So I went back to Punto the next day, and I said, Perla, okay, I'll volunteer. Start volunteering at Punto. In February, I got hired in Punto. June 1st, I got certified August 8th of 2023.
So you decided to become a recovery coach.
Yeah.
After all this life of, being incarcerated, being addicted to crack cocaine, being a cocaine user, now you find yourself on the other side, right? The good side, right?
Yeah.
The best side. We're not slaves to addiction no more, right? We're not needing to cope with drugs and alcohol. How's it feel to finally get to where you're at now?
Man, it is an awesome feeling. After being through jail so many times, and through all these Texas Ram facilities, and being on probation, being on drug court, my probation officer and the surveillance officers have asked me, "You're nothing short of a miracle, Kai. Like, how did you do it? What are we doing wrong?" I said, you guys need recovery coaches inside y'all's facilities. Y'all need more people that walk the streets instead of people that walk the halls. Y'all need more people with lived experience. You guys are always quick to tell us, why don't you just stop? If we could just stop, then we would. But we can't. You guys have to understand, they have to understand that we deal with we mask a lot of pain, trauma, past hurt. A lot of stuff goes with being on substances. It's just not, we just decided to be a drug addict one day and here we are. We just decided to mess up our lives. That's not what we did, So now they're beginning to understand a little bit, because each and every day, every time I go in to report, they kind of ask me a little more and more how they can improve. What can they do better? So I hope and pray that they do incorporate recovery coaches inside the justice system. Because we're not criminals. We just have a sickness, and we just have substance abuse disorder. But we're not bad people. And that's my story.
And just before we wrap up, Kai, so, you got 2 years celebrated yesterday, right?
Yes.
Or was it?
Yesterday.
All right, congrats on those 2 years. Woo! That's 2 years worth of miracles. So what are some things that you do to stay clean? Like, what's your pathway in recovery?
My pathway? Wow. NA.
Narcotics Anonymous.
Narcotics Anonymous. I stay close to people in recovery. I don't try to do it by myself. Because a lot of times I would before I would get a little clean under my belt, and then, I got this. No, I don't have it. I still have to stay humble, because pride always comes before a fall, and I have to always remember where I come from. remember where I'm going and never get ahead of myself and always live in the moment.
What would you like to tell the addict that's still suffering?
Recovery is possible. One important thing is never do it for your children. Don't do it for your family. Do it for yourself. Because when you do it for yourself, that's when it becomes possible. That's where the joy comes from. And that's where it's going to make it easier and it's going to make it more exciting. And that's when it's going to be doable. And everlasting.
Amen. Well, Kai, I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful to be a part of your co-worker, part of your recovery family. And yeah, man, just thanks a lot. We give you a big ol' hug.
All right.